Welcome back to episode 53 of Blurred Summits. Today we are going to be talking about critical thinking. First, we're going to look at what does a critical thinker actually look like. Next, we're going to talk about why you should care about critical thinking. And last but certainly not least, we are going to show you ways in which you can improve your critical thinking.
Coming in guns blazing today.
Coming in guns blazing. So Hudson, what does a critical thinker look like?
So there's kind of four big things that a critical thinker does that a non-critical thinker doesn't do.
Okay.
So those big four things are they raise vital questions and problems, kind of relating to life in general.
So they're a questioning type person.
Yes, they're kind of wanting to know more about things, right? They're always looking to learn more information, asking questions when they don't really know what's going on.
Interesting.
So then they get a better understanding of what's going on around them.
So Curious George is a critical thinker.
You know it.
He goes step number one. Okay, let's see if he fits
one,
other
check.
criteria.
Gathers and assesses relevant information.
Curious George does that too.
Was his information he gathered relevant?
Yes, because I honestly have never seen the show. I'm
Was
not
he trying to get some bananas?
Probably.
I don't know.
Why
did you go down this route when we?
I don't know. Okay.
Digging us a hole here. So yeah, gathers and assesses relevant information. So they basically, they're using their ideas to interpret the things that they're looking at, right?
Sorry, so that third one was what?
Well, that was still the second
sorry,
one.
that was the second one?
Gather and assess relevant information, right?
Okay. So
basically,
they're on topic.
They'll raise a question, then they'll go down and gather relevant information about them questions.
Down the same pathway. They're not like in a whole different realm.
Yeah, I mean, you could be have multiple questions kind of going at the same time if you really want to.
Okay.
Not the most, but they are looking and trying to gather information about the questions they've raised or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Third one is they think open-mindedly within alternative systems of thought. So they can think in many different ways, right? They're not one-dimensional.
Okay.
So like they're able to understand kind of both sides of the problem, look at it from one direction, look at it the other direction.
They can probably see the nuances a little bit better. Yeah. They're not so closed in their thinking. And I bet you a critical thinker, they're able to not constrict themselves to what they previously know.
Yeah, and that we actually touch on that. We'll touch on that a bit later down the line too, and kind of the tips to increase being a better critical thinker.
Right.
So then the last one here is communicate effectively with others when trying to figure out like solutions to complex problems. So they're a team player.
They're a team player.
No lone wolf. They're able to work with someone else and use the information they both know to mend it together to then get towards that answer.
And the hardest part is probably when you have multiple different answers, figuring out how those two interplay with one another.
And what is the best answer or combined answer they choose to come to.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay. Nice.
So basically, a critical thinker, they're self-directed, self-disciplined, self-monitored, and they have like self-corrective thinking. So as they learn more information, they're able to adapt what they once thought to believe and do it themselves.
They're beasts at thought.
All they need is themselves, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously if they do find someone else, they can use them, but they technically don't need someone else to get them to that answer they're looking for.
Right. Okay.
So next, let's jump into why you should care about critical thinking. So basically in this book by, who was it? Andrew Roberts, the author of The Thinking Student's Guide to College, he basically said critical thinking matters in college because students often adopt the wrong attitude to thinking about difficult questions. So they'll often oversimplify things, make it seem quite one-dimensional.
Interesting. So wait, what is the approach that students take?
Well, they I don't actually know the actual. Well, they oversimplify things.
I think that might be what it is, where they, like, for example, in a lot of science classes.
Well, actually, we do touch on that. I'll touch that a bit down, but these are kind of like his main ideas of why critical thinking really matters. And then we'll get into, there'll be ignorant certainty and naive relativism are kind of the two things that students often do. Okay. Which kind of messes them up. And
so what else does he say? So why should students critical think?
Well, because critical thinking allows you to form your own opinions and engage with the material beyond a superficial level. So you can dig deeper, right? Because if you kind of come into something not thinking critically, you'll take these super difficult classes, like that's the answer, and leave it at that, right? Not digging deeper to find the actual underlying the roots that cause the correct answer there.
And if we look at the general trends in university in particular, the trend is that if something is difficult, you just kind of memorize how to do the problem set, go write the exam and then you don't care.
Yeah.
Versus critical thinkers probably get to skip out on that memorization stage.
They understand it.
They understand it, so they're better able to apply it.
And that's like this next one where it's like they're able to craft worthy arguments and be able to back them up.
And that's fundamentally, if you look at what is life and what is knowledge, knowledge is the ability to craft an argument about a certain topic, right? And are you able to take that argument and posit it in a way where you can back it up with some evidence? If you look at it, that's what English is, that's what science is, that's what math is. They just do it with numbers, one does it with words, one does it with the humans and biology. So it's just different ways in which we can critically think and formulate these arguments.
Yeah. So basically a critical thinker, they're able to reevaluate or self-evaluate their grades, their work in school, right? And through doing so, they're able to actually get better marks on tests because they're able to understand, look and be like, okay, those are the things I don't know. I'm going to ask questions about these things. Try to find the answers and then actually know what they're talking about.
And if you want to be a person of achievement, you kind of have to be a critical thinker. Because if you're coming up with a new idea,
you need to push
the
boundaries.
Like think about the first guy who thought of an atom, right? First guy who thought about different ways. That? It was, I don't know. It was ancient Greek. Like the ancient Greeks. They were the first ones who described the atoms. That's what atom comes from, atomos, I think. Dude, I could completely be butchering this, but I'm pretty sure atom comes from atomos, which means like the smallest possible thing. Anyways, that's besides the point. But somebody has to critically think, because otherwise you're either critically thinking or you're memorizing. And if you're memorizing, you can't come up with new ideas because you're regurgitating old ideas.
Yeah. So now we'll jump into the mistakes that lots of college students tend to make when they're trying to critically think, or like when they're trying to think in college. So the first one is ignorant certainty. So this is basically the belief that there are definite correct answers to all questions. Like in college and even in life, there are to almost everything, to all meaningful questions, they're rarely straightforward. There's almost never one exact answer.
Yeah, and that's something that I hate.
And so if you want to excel in your classes, you have to be able to think critically about the material and look at it from these different perspectives and understand that there isn't one direct line to the answer.
And this is why classes, for example, organic chemistry, are so difficult, is because organic chemistry actually requires a vast amount of critical thinking, because, truth be told, the teachers don't even really know what's going on. There's always these little exceptions. There's these different things that you have to think about. And so students come in there and they're asking them, hey, give me these rules of thumb. Give me these things guidelines that I can follow. And should I follow these guidelines, I'll be good to go for the class. And the profs, even though they're bad profs, they tell them, like, I don't know. I can't tell you because that's not what reality is like.
It's so
there
complex
is no
that there
one
isn't
way.
An exact,
Exactly.
And they're still figuring out all these other ways as they go.
Exactly.
So the next thing, so those who kind of start to understand ignorant certainty, they tend to go the other direction and lean towards what is known as naive relativism. So this is a belief that there's no truth and all arguments are equal.
Yeah.
Right? And that's super unrealistic, because that's basically the view that people adopt when they error. They're like, oh no, there's all these things, so therefore there's no truth and all arguments have to be the same, right?
Like, so the person starts off believing that, okay, everything has an answer.
Yeah.
Then one day reality hits them and they're like, wait, not everything has an answer. So then they flip to the other extreme.
Like, there are no answers.
There's no answers, and everyone...
And no matter anything anyone says has to be on par with everything else everyone else says.
It's like those idiots who... Sorry, not idiots. It's like those people who say, you can argue that 1 + 1 is 3. Like, no, you can't. You can't argue that. Okay? Don't say anything, Hudson. Okay?
I mean, I did take a class where
I have
actually done a proof before
on your face.
Or it is like that. Or it is this plus this is not 1, not 2. But
the people who came up with those proofs are the naive relativists, because they are the ones who are saying there's equal possibility that everything is right. Like, come on, no, there isn't. Anyways.
Well, not necessarily. It's the trick with like proofs and stuff is basically what that type of stuff is. You got to take logic. There's actually a class where you do that stuff and you do those types of weird proofs.
It doesn't make sense. Symbols. See, Ahmad's even shaking his head.
I have done it. I think I actually have had to prove that they do not equal that one, or that I think it was like 1 + 1 does not equal 2.
Oh,
and stuff like that.
Anyways,
but yeah. So basically, when it comes down to it, they basically think that arguments are all the same, when in reality, there are arguments that have to be better than others, right?
Yeah.
So it's like both ways are wrong. So they have to find kind of meet in the middle where not everything is right, but not everything is wrong. Some things are better than others. Some have more merit than others.
Yeah.
And sometimes there even can be definite answers to things. You just have to pick and choose the situation to kind of know when that is.
Absolutely.
And then move from there. So now we're going to jump into 5 tips for critical thinking. So if you feel like you're struggling with like thinking and pushing your boundaries with like your thinking, these 5 tips should help you be able to push your boundaries, learn more things, and kind of improve on how you think as a person. So the first one is you want to ask basic questions. Why basic questions, you might ask? Because everyone's like, oh, got to be super complex, right?
Why basic questions, you might ask? Get it? Because why basic? You told me to ask basic questions.
Because like oftentimes, like the explanations can get so complex for things that the original question gets lost in the sauce.
Yeah.
You don't want to get lost in the sauce.
Absolutely.
You want to be able to see that the one pinch of salt that you threw in there, find that answer and go from there, right? So to avoid constantly, so it's basically you want to avoid constantly going back to the basic questions asked. Wait, what? I'm losing my.
No. You want to ask the basic questions.
Yeah, you want to constantly be going back to the basic questions.
You want your foundations to be very strong in a subject.
Because things can start getting complex, but then you want to just regurgitate the same questions. Like, but why? How does that thing do that? All these basically simple things, right?
And simplicity indicates understanding.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
So like some of the questions you can ask are, what do you already know? How do you know that? What are you trying to prove? And like, what are you overlooking? Like things like basically break it down and be like, wait, am I missing something?
These are real self-aware questions, right?
Yeah. And you have to ask these questions to make yourself be like, okay, those are the things that I'm looking for. Or you'll lose it, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you go down this deep rabbit hole.
Say those 4 questions again.
What do you already know?
What do I already know?
How do you know that?
How do I know this?
What are you trying to prove?
What are you trying to prove?
What are you overlooking?
What are you overlooking? And I feel like these 4 questions can be applied beyond school as well and can actually be applied to life.
Yeah.
Think about, for example, you have something that's just keeps nagging you in your mind, an uncomfortable situation. Maybe you had a fight with a friend, you had a falling out with a family member, whatever. You can ask yourself these 4 questions. Like, what do I know about the situation? Am I imposing my own sort of beliefs on these situations? Am I wrong in my perceptions?
These make you way more self-aware of what's going on. And I think that's the big thing, right? Is being self-aware with studying, right? What are you supposed to study if you don't know what you don't know?
Yeah.
It's okay. What is it that I know? This is what I know. Okay, this is stuff I don't know. Then you can go focus on that stuff. You're just wasting your time doing otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Because when it comes down to it, finding the simple answer in something super complex is more awesome than finding the super complex answer that only you really understand, right?
That is very true. The super complex answer is usually the wrong one.
That can be debated.
Right? Like if a person can only explain something in convoluted terms in which only they can understand, then they really don't have a good understanding of it. Okay, so the next tip after you ask the simple questions, it's to question the basic assumptions.
Yeah.
Right? And so the idea of questioning your basic assumptions, it's that there's things we take as, okay, this is true right now. And we take these for granted. These things could be wrong. 1,000 years ago, they used to believe completely different things about the earth. If it wasn't for people questioning what are the basic understandings about our reality, then we wouldn't have the information that we have today.
Yeah. So how can people use this to in their school, in their thing, to challenge that and push their boundaries when it comes to their thinking then?
How can people do it? If a teacher tells you that you're wrong, tell them that they're wrong.
Well, I don't think that's what challenging them is. Challenging is looking at them from like a critical perspective, not just saying they are 100% right. They're not a certain truth.
And
so
even fair,
sometimes things you could get something wrong. You're like, is that 100% correct? Sometimes it might not be. But if you don't question it, you're never going to know.
And if you really think about it, our level of education is pretty much the same as teachers who teach high school students. So think about how wrong we are. Teachers could be just as wrong as many times as that. You even had a little thing in your last exam where your professor was like completely wrong in the exam. They had the wrong answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, sometimes it doesn't hurt to just question it, right? Be like, I wonder what I got wrong. Why did I get that wrong? By going through, maybe you'll realize, hey, I was right, marked wrong. Or at very worst, you'll realize why you got something wrong and know the right answer from that one, right?
Yeah. And that doesn't make you disrespectful for doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a respectful way about questioning things.
It's all about the finesse.
Like with this
how
one,
you do it.
This was, I emailed him like, hey, I was wondering if I could look over the answers.
Yeah.
Content was interesting. I just want to see what I got wrong just for personal knowledge. Went through and it's like, okay, that one I got wrong. So then I basically talked out loud on my thought process on it. It's like, okay, that's where you kind of erred. This is why. And then that one, I said it. She sat there. She's like, you know what? No, that is actually, that's the right answer. That's exactly it. And then it's not about, you don't come in saying
attacking.
You don't come in saying you are wrong. What I did has to be right.
Right.
You come in being like, look, I'm probably wrong because almost. And then by rationalizing why you thought the process you did, the teacher might realize, oh, wait, there was something there that I missed. Or I can see exactly where you're coming from, so I understand why that is also a right answer.
And the teacher doesn't feel like you are disrespecting them.
You're not trying to attack them or steal marks.
Them. Exactly.
You're there to embrace,
this
learn
is
more.
A collaboration of critical thinkers, we might say.
Yeah, you're coming in to learn more information yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then they respect that. As long as you're not coming in clearly trying to be like, that's wrong. I'm coming in to fight this so I can get an extra mark. You're not. You're coming in to learn more information.
Yeah.
So then the next one here, next tip is you want to be aware of your mental processes.
Process?
Maybe. Yeah. So basically, you need to question and look at yourself and see what biases do I have when I'm making these things, right? Yeah. Sometimes you'll have these cognitive things, you won't even realize it. Episode on that, little plug there.
Yeah.
But sometimes you'll be making these little things without even realizing it, kind of skimming over things in your process, cutting corners. You don't realize you're cutting corners on.
And you don't realize why you're cutting corners. This is a big problem in math, for example. A lot of people will cut corners, do things a quicker way. They don't know why they're doing it. The reason that they're doing it is because it worked a couple of times, so they assume it's going to work again in the future, but it doesn't because their entire thought process was wrong.
Yeah. So I actually have an example like that. In one of my classes, it was this business fundamentals class. We got handed this formula basically to calculate what's known as the PVCCATS, which is present value of the basically depreciation tax shield, saving money from it. It's this big, it was a giant formula.
Okay.
Probably I don't know how to.
It was a big
This
guy.
is a little plus thing. This was the equation. So then it was big. And so I did this whole balance sheet type thing to find the same answer. But I did that because I completely understood how to do it my way. Got to the same answer. A little slower, but I understood every little step why things are the way it is. Instead of using this giant formula, which is plug in these 5 different values you have 12 times in these different locations to get an answer. Why would you do something the way you don't know how to do it? Because then you can't really catch yourself if you mess up. But if you know exactly why and how to do something, when you're scanning through it, you can understand, oh, wait, I made a little mistake there.
And that's when you can adapt that knowledge, right? When you understand it, in a critical manner, then you're able to apply it in different ways, whether you do it through a balance sheet, whether you do it through something else. But if you don't understand the fundamentals and the basics of that formula or that problem, then what you're going to end up doing is you're going to be taking these shortcuts that are going to screw you over.
You make a little slip up, you'll just assume it's right because you don't know. It's
Exactly.
I must have plugged it in right. You don't know. Sometimes there's some nuances, some rules that change. Mess it up, right? So then the next tip, the 4th tip here is you want to practice active listening, right? So when you're hearing people talk, you want to be able to actually listen actively and understand what words they're actually saying. Because sometimes you're not really paying attention. You're trying to push a narrative when you're, say, conversation or something, trying to convince one person versus another position. But really, if you take your time and listen to what they're saying, you can truly understand what they're saying, why they're saying it, kind of what their motives behind it and things like that.
Yeah.
And you can really take that in and then use that to really create a better argument or create a much better conversation, more balanced less biases, like the last tip there, and really have a more wholehearted conversation than you would otherwise, right?
Yeah, the point of active listening, correct me if I'm wrong, is to really embody the words that are being said in front of you.
Well, yeah, getting like a full understanding of what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
Getting a full understanding, like basically what they're trying to get, what they need, what they're trying to get out of you, right?
And what is it that they're actually saying? Not just what are the words that are coming out of their mouth.
Yeah. Because sometimes they have some underlying things, like in their body posture, their tone,
Yeah.
that you're not really picking up on if you're not focusing in on what they're saying.
You got to be 100% in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are these like little 3-word quips in here today? Throwing me off. So then the last one here is you need to develop foresight. So basically, same thing when you're trying to talk to people. Before you have that conversation, run through maybe some of the possibilities, outcomes that could happen in your mind, sort of understand where that conversation could go, and kind of understand and prep for that and trend towards the better outcomes out of the ones you've basically gone through in your head, right? Because say you're trying to talk to someone about a serious thing, maybe they messed up, come and they're mad at them without creating any foresight, and then they get really mad back at you, and that's super unproductive.
Yeah.
Oh no, you just completely ruined a learning opportunity for someone.
And for a math problem, that could be before you read the question, before you start writing down the answer, you can visualize all the steps that you need to take.
Yeah.
Right?
Basically, yeah, preparing for something before you do it, foresight.
Yeah.
And then therefore, you can be much better prepared for what it is that you happen to do, right?
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. If you'd like to catch the full video podcast, you can catch it on YouTube. The full audio podcast is out on all platforms. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and think of one friend who could benefit from the information we shared today and share this podcast with them. Thank you.